right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Los Altos School District Board of Trustees to order. A recording and or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and or broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. We'll now take roll. Vladimir Ivanovich.
Here.
Jessica Spicer. Here. Brian Johnson.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
I, Wei Shelley Serkey, am here also. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to agenda approval. Would any board members like to provide comment on the agenda? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Approval to approve tonight's agenda as presented. Motion was made by Jessica and seconded by Brian. To a roll call vote. Vladimir,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
two vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Superintendent's update. Mr. Baird?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to update the board on a few items this evening. Great start to the school year. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we have met. That was just prior to the school year starting. It has been a fantastic opening. Students happy to be back on campus, staff as well. So I've been around to all the schools. Sandra has as well, been able to walk through the classrooms, and we are doing well. Likewise, we've reported to you about the Chat Back Together program that we are implementing. That has started as well in our upper grades, 4 through 8. That is going well also. Kids are participating eagerly in that, and Jack has been a great support there. So we are getting all of what I would say are our typical, more typical events moving again, various events at school sites, various committee meetings and so forth that go on as well. Doing those safely, following protocols set forth by the state and the county. But it has overall been a great start to the school year. So appreciate your support in making that happen. Sandra, anything else to add about that?
Great. Great. Thank you, Jeff. All right, let's move on to the consent calendar. Would any board members like to provide comment on the consent calendar for tonight? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Motion to approve tonight's consent calendar as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Brian. We'll now take a roll call vote. Vladimir,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. On to employee requests to address the board. From the Los Altos Teachers Association, we have Kate Schermerhorn.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Nice to see everybody tonight. As I was getting ready for class this morning, it struck me that we are already entering our second full week of school. So this year is up, it is moving, it's grooving. Kids are happy. Teachers are also happy to have their kids and are working hard. Right now, our elementary teachers are preparing for their virtual back to school night. I know our middle schools, Block and Egan, had theirs last week, and our elementary teachers are gearing up for theirs right around the corner this week. We are super excited to connect with our families about the upcoming year together. And over the past week and a half that we have had together so far, I know teachers across the district have been really getting to know their students as people and individuals, and also as learners, and starting to gather that beginning of the year assessment data so that we know how to better support them. So we are all in this. We are diving into our work and also that social connection. I just heard Jeff mention that Check Back Together program. And while I didn't get to observe everybody's, I was able to observe my own class, and they loved it. They were just so into the art and the talking and the sharing. So from my perspective on that, at least, my students really enjoyed that, and it is nice to be back together. So that is it, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you, Kate. It's really nice to hear about the track program. I don't think we have anyone from the California School Employees Association tonight, no? Okay. All right. Now, for public comment, to provide public comment on an agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. We'll take community comments. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. Let's see, do we have anyone for community comments tonight? I don't see any. Okay. Public comment is closed. On to action and discussion items. First one, opening of the 2021-22 school year. Staff will present an overview of the start of the school year and a preview of increased COVID protocols. Jeff?
Yes, so thank you. Wanted to walk you through the start of the school year. As you remember, when we left off last meeting, the board had directed staff to implement masking outdoors. So we have done that. Staff and students are doing well with that. I'd say the one area that we're working through right now is after school sports, working with the other districts in our league to make sure that we have similar expectations. So I'll be able to report back to you on that in a coming meeting. But as an example, cross country was one that was out of the gate fast, no pun intended. And so for that particular sport, the students are required to wear masks when they're in a meeting, gathering around the coach, talking strategy, things like that. When they're actually running on the trail, their masks can be down. So we're working through the various sports to understand that. It'll get a little more complicated as we move to some of the closer contact indoor sports, but I'll report back on that to you. All right, so you probably remember this from last year. This is a count of the number of cases we have had. This is a running count, so you will see those numbers, I am guessing, in all probability increase throughout the school year. Not saying that in an alarming way, but we are living with COVID right now. So you can see that there are 3 cases identified from the start of the school year, which we're terming August 1. 3 cases at Almond, 1 at Covington, 1 at Loyola. So those are our counts this year. We are following a modified quarantining protocol as outlined by the state. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this agenda item. Monica Sidher, our lead district nurse, is also at the meeting here. So we'll allow her to chime in when it comes to that.
So, students and staff?
This is students and staff. What I can tell you is we have had no outbreak, no spread as a result of these cases on campus. To this point, it's what we expected. It's similar to what we experienced last year, and we are implementing the necessary COVID protocols to ensure that doesn't happen as best we can. This is just a look at where we are in the county. I thought it would be good to see. We're at a rolling average of about 350 cases right now in the county. I think it's important to look at that in comparison to where we were about 6 months ago. Also, this is new data that the county started putting up this summer. This shows the case rates per 100,000 for various groups, right? And so I'll point out that the highest line is the case rate for unvaccinated residents. The middle line is the case rate for the overall county. And then the teal line at the bottom, or the aqua line, is for fully vaccinated individuals. So you can really see the difference there. They are also breaking out one more group, and this is pertinent to us because the purple line that's added there is the case rate for people aged 11 and younger. Right. So currently that's about 17.9, 18 per 100,000. So still well below the unvaccinated case rate, the overall unvaccinated case rate. Just thought that would be of interest to you, to us. I want to talk a little bit about the in-person learning for 21-22 this school year. As you know, we are back in full force, all grade levels, all schools. This includes after-school programs, which are slated to begin after Labor Day this year. Historically, I think we have started them prior to that, but we just wanted to make sure that we had our program in place before we added that to our full program. Hot lunch is also in operation. We are having volunteers on campus. They are having to show proof of full vaccination. And when we say full vaccination, it means second shot 2 weeks after, right? So full vaccination. School sites are actually gathering that information themselves for the volunteers on campus because they have the greatest knowledge of the people. So they're collecting it at each individual school site and tracking it on a Google document. We are, I know some of you have been at, I have as well, running our community and all school events. Those have taken place this year, again, following all of the Santa Clara County Public Health and California Department of Public Health safety protocols. And junior high sports, as I just mentioned, are starting up as well. We do have independent study available, as you know, for students who cannot safely attend school in person. Our number is about 20 students right now, so it's a small number. I think that is in part, as I've said before, evidence that we are doing this well, making sure that everyone is safe and that we're following health protocols. So good news on that front, the number remains low. In terms of community building, we know this is one of the really important things coming out of last year, where we had so many people in and out of distance learning, some all year. But making sure we're building community through PTA, through LAEF, through our ambassadors program, really rebuilding those communities, both at school sites and across the district. We held orientations for our kindergartners and transitional kindergartners back in August, prior to their first day of school. Different schools have different events, lemonade parties, whatever they may be, just to get to know the students and the school. Scheduled day occurred at our junior high schools. Great success getting those kids back on campus. They were very charged up. Also, as you know, during the typical year, we have principal-led events, principal coffees, assemblies, all school meetings. Those are either in place or are starting up at our schools. And then teacher-led activities in the classrooms to really build connections, build relationships with families at our schools. We know that those were stretched last year, so we want to make sure that we are focusing and giving great effort to making sure that we have those relationships. It is the strength of who we are as a school district. And as we talked about, our CHAC partnership for the mental health program. So in terms of safety, I think it's good to remember what we are doing and that we do not take it lightly by any means. Facial coverings are a requirement indoors and outdoors on our campuses right now. We are checking ventilation, ensuring that there is adequate ventilation in our classrooms, in our various spaces on campus, not just classrooms. We do have a monitor in each room that measures airflow within the classrooms to understand what type of ventilation we have. There's one right here on the counter behind Jessica. Symptom tracking is not a requirement, but we are still doing that. We know one of the really important ways that we can mitigate the spread is to make sure people are staying home when they have symptoms, right? When they're not feeling well. So we're still each morning requiring staff and students to complete OK to Reopen is the tool we use, and get a report of that every morning in our school offices, and our school nurses look at that as well and intervene where necessary. We're also prepared to isolate people who are symptomatic. We have quarantine rooms on each of our campuses that we can utilize should that happen. We're focused on hand hygiene, cleaning, disinfecting as appropriate. As you recall, back on August 11th, effective August 12th, the governor required that all staff at schools need to either be vaccinated or submit to testing. So we have that in place. We've checked vaccination on all our employees, and we have a subset that's required to test 2 times a week. And we're at about 95%, I would say our number is, of vaccinated individuals. And so the balance of them, there's about 30 people that have to test twice a week. And that is up and running now. And then we are following the California Department of Public Health K-12 guidance. The main order came out August 2nd. So we are adhering to that. That really covers most of everything on the above it on that list. Wanted to talk a bit about something new since the last time we met, and that is pooled testing. Last year, for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we conducted pooled testing in each of our classrooms. So each group of students would once a week self-swab and then put their swabs in a single vial, and that would be tested, and data would be returned to us on whether it was positive or negative. We did not have a positive last year. If there was a positive, though, in that vial, it would require that entire cohort to test, right? Because identifying who the positive is important in that situation. So we have opened it up to all grades this year, TK-8, and consent emails have been sent out to all families at our schools, and those are due back on the 9th of September. This, again, the whole idea behind this is it gives us early identification of positives, right? And asymptomatic positives specifically. Monica, do you want to talk a little bit about modified quarantine and how that's a little bit different this year? Monica Sidher is our lead district nurse and expert in this particular area.
Thank you, Jeff. So modified quarantine applies for students only who are exposed in the school setting. And what it allows for is asymptomatic students to continue to attend school as long as they test twice within their 10-day quarantine period. Anybody who is symptomatic needs to remain at home and be tested, either through their provider or through one of the county-based programs for testing. But we really want to keep asymptomatic students present at school as long as they test and provide test results twice within that modified quarantine period. The other thing that applies in a mod quarantine is students can only attend school who are in a modified quarantine, so they are not able to participate in extracurriculars until they have completed their modified quarantine period.
So they can only belong to a single group, and that would be their classroom group. All right, and that we really want to highlight that last piece because it is a change that we will be conducting testing of all of our students on a weekly basis.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any clarifying questions from the board? Okay. I do see that we have some requests for public comment. I see 6. We have 6 requests for public comment tonight. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes.
Do you want to announce? You want me to announce?
Oh, sorry, I thought. Yeah,
Okay.
you can.
That's great.
Go ahead.
So Melissa?
Thank you, Superintendent Bayer and Board of Trustees, for your continued hard work. I was not able to make public comment on the mandatory outdoor masking, which was approved after only 2 parents proposed it at the last board meeting, as my son's school had a meeting at the same time. As of August 4th, the CDC K-12 guidance states people do not need to wear masks when outdoors, for example, participating in outdoor play, recess, and PE. Emails to parents state, LASD is required to and will continue to follow all CDPH guidelines for school reopening. However, the latest guidance says masks are optional outdoors for all in K-12 school settings. If LASD is following CDPH guidance, how can masks be mandatory outside? When the public health guidance for the nation, state, and county does not require outdoor masks, then mandating them without providing scientific evidence seems to be getting ahead of the data. I appreciated that Superintendent Bayer mentioned at the last meeting that the board should be cautious of using its own science versus expert science. Where is the data that addresses the importance of masking outside? What metrics were used to come to the decision of mandatory outdoor masking? We should be making evidence-based decisions based on the unbiased assessment of the potential risks versus benefits of masking healthy children outdoors. In a recent article from The Atlantic titled, "I Tell My Patients Not to Mask Their Kids Outside," Dr. Lucy McBride wrote, "Viral particles disperse effectively outside." In a recent analysis of more than 232,000 infections in Ireland, only 1 case of COVID-19 in every 1,000 was traced to outdoor transmission, which equals 0.1% of cases. David Leonhardt of the New York Times wrote that multiple epidemiologists told him that the share of transmission that has occurred outdoors seems to be below 1% and may be below 0.1%. Unmasking outdoors has many clear benefits. Students get to see each other's smiles and facial expressions to learn social skills. Overall, better mental health due to lack of barrier. Students get fresh air to breathe. Students are better able to communicate because their voices are not muffled. Students are less likely to overheat and experience dizziness and headaches from running around in masks in 80-degree weather during PE and recess. Of course, if people aren't comfortable outside in LASD, they can put their masks on or wear stronger protection like double masks or an N95. Due to the lack of science, lack of stricter guidance from the county and state, lowered risk of outdoor transmission, and benefits of unmasking outdoors, I urge the board to rescind the mandatory outdoor mask policy. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, we have Irina Stepanova.
Hi, thank you for listening to me. I fully support what Melissa just said. I just wanted to add that if masks actually prevented COVID transmissions, then the epidemic would have been over in March 2020, okay, in April. We are a year and a half into mask wearing, and we still hope that we will prevent the epidemic spread due to mask wearing. And we are masking our children. It's a shame to see children in Los Altos, in the heart of Silicon Valley, the most educated and probably one of the richest region of the country and of the world, masking their children outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena.
Right, next we have Elena Melgarejo.
Hello, I am Amy from Ammon School. Last year, I obeyed all the rules about wearing masks, but nobody asked me if I was okay about it. I am tired. I sweat a lot. I feel short breath when I play. I want to ask to let my parents choose what is the best for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Jeff, before you call the next speaker, I see that 2 more people raised their hands after I cut off public comment. So I believe Jeannie Sai is the
Jeannie
last.
Sai was the last,
Yeah.
yes. All right, Lori Sue.
Hello. Good afternoon. I just want to support Melissa's opinion, saying that I want my child to be able to breathe fresh air at school, wearing a mask while she is playing outdoor. That means that she forced my daughter to constantly touch her face and adjust her mask, thus causing her to come into more contact with germs from her hands while she's supposed to free play. So please allow each parent to decide whether their child wearing a mask outdoor at school is the best interest of their child. Free their smiles and allow them to love and learn again in the environment. They are happy to be in a safe space. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is Trevor Marshall.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, so I guess I'm just sort of commenting on the same thing. I was wondering, you guys never sort of explained where you have a legal right to come up with public health policy that differs from the California Department of Public Health. And also point out there, the World Health Organization does not recommend masks for kids 5 and under. So, and there's, a lot of evidence that masking outdoors for children, elementary school children, there's whole countries where they don't do it and they don't have higher rates. And you guys didn't address any of that. But in general, I think the board should just say we follow the California Department of Public Health and the county guidelines and not come up with their own ones. I'm wondering, is there a limiting factor on this? Like, can you require, extra measles vaccines or tetanus boosters every 2 years or something? Or is this some part of an emergency, powers that the Los Altos School Board has gotten? I guess that's it for me.
Thank you.
All right, and finally we have Jeannie Sai.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you guys for bringing back the pool testing and implementing it for all grades. I was really happy to see that. I hope all families will participate so we can get a pretty good snapshot of where we are. I was wondering, and I don't know if it came across clearly in my email to y'all, I was wondering if our district would consider offering daily on-site PCR testing like MVLA for those families who are exposed to positive cases, or if their kids need to get tested because they have COVID-like symptoms. As I mentioned in my email, I have personal experience with this last week due to my freshman having a sore throat. I'm asking for on-site PCR testing because right now it actually is quite hard to get, it can be hard to get symptomatic testing done. I am a stay-at-home mom, as you guys know, so I can, drive to the fairgrounds at a moment's notice, but not every family can do that. As a test last Tuesday, I tried to get a symptomatic appointment done, just go through the process and see if I could book anything. So that was Tuesday. And at that time, I couldn't find anything outside of the fairgrounds at PAM or El Camino Hospital. And I couldn't get anything until Friday. So given we're asking all families to keep their kids at home if they have any COVID-like symptoms, I was wondering if the district could consider making the on-site testing more accessible so that families who, they might be more willing to keep their kids at home because they know that they can easily get it done, say at Block or Egan, or maybe we could consider partnering up with MBLA and Mountain View Wisman to have it done at either of the high schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie. All right, that's it for public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment? Jessica, can you start?
Yeah, Jeff, where do we have the authority with our, the mask mandate? Where do we find that?
Yeah, so the California Education Code does give broad authority to Board of Trustees to take actions that they deem necessary to protect students and staff. I don't have the Ed Code section right in front of me, but that's where we get it.
Okay. That is it for now. I may have more, but that's it.
Yeah, Jeff, this is just some follow-up questions on independent study. You said that we have roughly 20 roughly 20 students.
Right.
Is there any commonality in those students? Is there anything that distinguishes them as a group, or is it just?
Sandra, do you know?
No, I would say up to 20, we actually have one family of 5 children. So if you think of that is kind of a subset, but no, it's across grade levels from kindergarten through 8th grade, really where the family has determined that their child cannot be in person.
Along sort of the same lines, have we gotten in touch with all the students that we think ought to be in school? Are there any ones that we have, because last year there were a small percentage that we were not able to get in touch with. How do we stand this year?
Do you mean from independent study?
No,
Or just from?
Just not showing up at school.
I believe, the first few days of school is all about contacting families who don't show up. And so Bridget and the school secretaries are calling families to see, are you out sick? Have you moved? What is that status? And so I do believe we've gone through.
We accounted for all of our students.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah, we got an email shortly before the meeting. I thought had a good question about notification of cases on campus. I know, for example, that the high school, obviously they do direct notification of close contacts, but then they'll also do a general notification to the community that there was a case. I got that email today. So the request was basically, can we at least consider sending out a broader notification so that families who are particularly concerned at a particular school, for example, could choose then to do a stay-at-home, do an at-home test, one of the rapid tests, just given that we're not maintaining cohorts on campus this year. And so contact tracing is good, it's not always perfect. I think there's a set of parents maybe looking for just a broader awareness that there's been a case on campus so that they can pursue whatever extra measures in terms of testing or cautions.
So we're updating our tracker as they have it
Daily?
now.
Okay.
daily,
Okay. So that's where they should look.
Yep.
basically.
if they're going up that day.
So, I mean, that's a first thing, just something to think about for our principals. It may be different for different populations.
There's been cases that you and I have not received any notifications, so
Well,
that's new.
Maybe just less advertised.
I didn't get a notice. I will say that their on-site testing seems to be a little overwhelmed because there's so many kids who need to test. I could not get an appointment for my daughter in the community, or could she get it on-site at her high school? That's not her high school. So I think it's kind of this big logistical thing we need to figure out. That's what we're gonna do.
As part of the pool testing, we're getting other testing too, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, we will get the pool testing itself and then any associated response testing that comes as a result of the positive.
It will only be those deemed close contacts that get to.
Right.
So that would basically get done on campus the
Yes.
next day,
Yes.
but it would be, which I wanted to ask this question. So if there's a positive, then presumably somebody in that class is positive,
Correct.
but does the class not come in for a day, or do we go forward?
No, we test immediately
Test
to
immediately.
identify who that is.
Right. But then-
And if, I'll just add, if they're asymptomatic with the modified quarantine, if they're asymptomatic, they continue coming to school. Any symptoms, they stay home. So they would not come on.
Well,
campus.
somebody who's positive has to stay home regardless.
Not if they're asymptomatic.
No, close contacts who are
Yeah.
not displaying symptoms get to come in. If
Correct,
you're
but-
positive, you have to stay home.
Absolutely.
But for the pool testing, we don't know who's positive.
No, I know. I
Right, but
understand.
That's
yes,
the point.
That's my point.
yeah.
Jeff, can you just confirm that the testing that we do on site, pool testing or it's only for LASD staff and students? It is not for the community,
That's correct.
because I got asked that question. All right. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Okay. Why don't you just, Sandra, do you want to say something? Sorry.
Are we going to discuss masking issue? Or does that have to wait for another board meeting?
The board can discuss it. It was part of what was presented here.
I just wanted to say that from my point of view, it seems to me that imposing a masking requirement on kids outdoors is a very small burden. And I noticed that all the people, not all the people, some of the people who commented talked about parents making decisions for their children. The problem is that whether or not you're masked or not affects other people. And that's the issue for the masking. And so I don't think you could just look at it from the point of view, what's good for my child. I don't think it's much of a burden, so I personally don't think it's a big issue, but for some people, it apparently is. I don't know what to say, but yeah, I'm going to say.
Jeff, I appreciated the graph that you put up in the, maybe it's a few slides here, that the case rate for the under 11 population is still higher than the case rate for vaccinated, fully vaccinated individuals. Right?
Yep.
And I also appreciate that you have found it in the Ed Code that we do have the authority to protect our student population and our teachers for that matter, and staff. Steve, do you, yeah, Steve's name is it.
Yeah, I was just echoing a little bit of what Vladimir was saying is, I think we went down this path really out of preponderance of caution. As we're opening the doors of the school, we weren't sure what our COVID rates would be as we saw people coming in, and we wanted to make sure we were not a spreading organization. So we went I think we were opened with a very cautious approach to what interaction would be. And I think that idea that masking is the current stand, but I think it was always at least mine, and I'm going to embrace it from my point of view, is there was a hope that once we understood where we were as a community, once we had the kids interacting, we could revisit this on an ongoing basis. It wasn't going to stand for the entire school year. So please, I want to make sure everyone understands that too, that this was done to make sure we didn't end up having a spike in cases with children who couldn't currently access vaccines or other ways of preventing. So at least from my point of view, that's the logic I used. I hear everyone saying, yes, possibility of spreading outdoors is low. I understand all that. But I think we really were walking into this trying to encourage families to come back to school who hadn't been in school for 18 plus months and wanted to make sure everyone felt comfortable being there. And so we wanted to ramp into this slowly. And I think this will be an evolving conversation, at least from my point of view. I'd like to see it as an evolving conversation that we have as a board. And when do we feel that do we think it's appropriate to move or not move on this topic? So that's, the other thought I had on this as well.
Thanks, Steve. I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I completely agree. It is an evolving situation. When these kids can be, the big reason is these kids cannot be vaccinated.
Yeah, we have a huge population of unvaccinated individuals.
And one of the things I think we left out of the conversation tonight is that also as it relates to the quarantine guidelines, it's different for masked or unmasked kids. So that was part of our authorities. Like we were worried about, making sure these kids could come to school if they were asymptomatic, if they were unmasked and their contact was outside, they would have to stay home.
Then they'd be excluded, yes.
Okay.
We're 2 weeks into the school year, barely. So I think we need to go through a few more weeks and see how we're doing. Any other comments on this before I move this along? Okay. All right, thanks everyone. Let's move on to our next agenda item, curriculum and instruction update. Mrs. McGonigal will provide an update on the summer work completed in the Curriculum and Instruction Office and the professional learning opportunities for LASD teachers. Take it away.
Marcy's working her magic. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back and here to share some of the great work that's been happening around the Curriculum and Instruction Office throughout summer. I'll talk a little bit about welcoming new teachers and staff, the teacher training that we were able to provide and offer for our teachers and staff, and a little bit about our multi-tiered system as support as we, I feel like saying coming off the pandemic, but we're still in the midst of the pandemic, but after last year. So we'll start a little bit with welcoming new teachers. So this summer we were able to add some additional positions to our staffing, which is outstanding, and some real needed specialized folks. So we have been lucky enough to hire 2 tremendous and experienced academic school counselors, one for each of our junior high schools. And these gals really bridge the general education of all students, supporting families and students, help with transition from elementary into junior high, from transition to junior high into high school, can help around social and emotional needs of students. And in addition, really support that whole advisory concept where students are learning great skills and habits of being a strong student as we're preparing them for high school. If you talk to any of our junior high staff, they would tell you that this has been a missing piece in our staff, and each of the people within the office and within the broader staff have been taking up portions of this type of job, but to have one person who's really experienced in doing this work is outstanding. So we're really excited to welcome them. We were also able to hire 2 reading interventionists, one for Almond School and one for Santa Rita School, where we typically see the higher need around reading intervention. We worked this summer to train both of those folks and are working real closely. They are experienced LASD teachers. So we have Felina Lynn working over at Santa Rita. She moved from, I want to say, a first grade classroom last year into this reading intervention position and is so excited to be working at her staff. And then we have Joanne Martinez over at Almond, who's a longtime Almond teacher, worked in virtual school last year, but is back at Almond in this reading intervention position. So we've been doing some deep training with them around reading, early interventions, and our systematic interventions, and I'll talk about in a moment that they'll be working with students with our big goal of getting up and running quickly in early September. And then the last position we're really excited that we were able to hire is our family engagement facilitator. And this actually came out of a big conversation we've been having through our DLAC, our District English Language Advisory Group. And a need for us as a district to be able to better engage some of our families who are traditionally less engaged. So Lola, who we've hired, has been a long-term classified person within our district for several years. She's bilingual in Spanish. She has a social working background in her past, and she's already helped us, to your point, Vladimir, connect with families who we felt a little bit disconnected with during the pandemic. She's made house visits. She went to all of the kinder welcome events to make sure that our families feel really connected and engaged. So
Doing outreach for the pool
Yes.
testing right now.
Absolutely. So she will be a great asset to our team and is working predominantly with our Almond, Santa Rita, and Egan schools, but is available to support families and our schools across the district. So we're really excited about that. Charging my own thing here. Early in August, I know some of you were able to come to our new teacher luncheon to welcome our new teachers, but we were so excited to be able to spend 3 days learning together with our 35 or so new teachers and specialists. We really, each year we get feedback from our new teacher pool and some of our coaches around like what should these 3 days really be about? How do we want to induct people into our organization? So this year we switched it up a little bit, and actually our whole first day was having all of our folks understand and experience what we want learning to look like, what learning does look like in LASD. So they had a reading workshop. They had a really amazing math lesson. Rachel Phelps, one of our instructional support teachers, guided the whole group through a really engaging math inquiry. That was very exciting. They participated in a STEM design challenge. Trying to remember the other components, but had a real full day of experiencing what learning looks and feels like in LASD. And then the remainder of their time over those 3 days were really making sure they understood what resources and supports were available, who's who, and getting trained on the core curriculum so they're ready to teach on day one. And as Jeff said, we've been around to all of our schools and in all of our classrooms. We really have an amazing group of new teachers from the get-go, day one. There is something special about this group of teachers, which is really terrific. We are happy that they're here. So that was about our new folks, but of course, we always like to offer professional opportunities for our existing folks, and many of the new folks were invited as well. Teachers College, the Reading and Writing Project, the folks who develop our English language arts curriculum, we brought them in, one of their staff developers, for a 4-day, what they call a homegrown institute. So we had 25 of our K2 teachers join for a 4-day online training just for us around improved reading and phonics interventions. The feedback from the group was terrific. This is one of our staff developers from Teachers College that several of our teachers have seen before. And so they were super excited to have her really leading the charge there. We also provided Greg Drummond, that you all know, has made it his summer mission to get deep into teaching reading. And so he learned an incredible amount and led a reading intervention training for our 3-5 teachers. And the interesting thing about teaching students to read, as a former 6th grade teacher, our upper grade teachers, they are heavy into supporting comprehension of reading, but are less skilled, many of them, if not most of them, in how you teach someone to read, like decoding and all the different pieces of how you build reading. So this training was terrific. We will have round 2 in September for folks, but it really helped our upper grade teachers understand when they're seeing an older child with some reading difficulty, or they're not quite on grade level yet, that they have a whole toolkit now of strategies, assessments, how to really pinpoint exactly what it is you might be missing out on, and all the tools that I need to get it done, and strategies and ways to make it easy and impactful. So that's been a really great training. And then we had our big launch, as you remember, last spring. It feels like ages ago, but it was just last spring. We adopted the San Francisco Math curriculum. So we had our big launch day. We had Cecilio Dimas from the Silicon Valley Math Initiative came out. We split it up over 2 days, a K2 and a 3-5. He gave a great keynote, and then our coaches worked closely with SVMI to launch into the first round of curriculum, which is terrific. We want to make sure that this launch goes really smoothly, that teachers feel well supported. Our coaches have been doing a lot of learning with SVMI, which is great. And we want to make sure that all of our teachers have that sense of how they can support students who need it and how they can stretch students who need that stretch as well. And we had in all of these pieces really great participation. I mean, you should know, and I know you know, but our teachers love to learn, and we're really thankful that we can provide good opportunities for them just before school starts, so they feel like they have a little something extra in their tool belt before the new year begins. And our last area to talk about is MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. I don't remember if I talked about this in spring, but we had in the CNI office, knowing that we were wrapping up this crazy year last year, we brought in principals into the curriculum and instruction office and teams of 2 to really talk about what do we need to put in place to make sure from the get-go that we're going to be ready for what we're receiving for some kids who have never been in person. We've had all sorts of things to consider. So we really worked hard with them in the spring and then to synthesize throughout summer, and it was really fun to launch that with principals when they came back in early August. So you may remember this from a very old LCAP. This is one of the tiered systems of supports graphics that I made for an old LCAP, but it's really grounded in this idea that students need academic, behavioral, social, emotional supports, and that they're all along a spectrum, right? When we think about that center, most kids will do just fine with the traditional high quality core program we have across all of those academic, social, emotional, and behavioral. But we have some kids who need a little bit more. On either end, we might have a small group of kids who need some extension or a small group of kids who need some intervention. And then out on, we call that tier 2, and then out on the far fringes, right and left, we have students who have more intensive needs. Top and bottom, that doesn't sound right, right and left, but students who really need much greater acceleration or enrichment and much greater supports. So this is really what our multi-tiered system of support is rooted in this philosophy. And so coming from our principal meetings, we really identified all the components of what we needed to put together to have this aligned system. So we know everything begins with high quality tier 1 instruction. We have to make sure that every single classroom teacher has a strong foundation in what they're teaching, that they're using the right strategies, and that they're meeting the needs of the students within their classroom and getting to know kids and creating that safe environment, all of those great things. In addition to that, I'm going to kind of go up and over. We knew after hearing from principals, one of the biggest challenges for our principal groups and our school teams is this concept of progress monitoring. Well, we know when we have a student who might need some additional support, but it's so hard to keep on top of, well, how are they doing now and who's collecting what data? They're doing the interventions and they have a general sense that kids are doing better or worse, but it's a little less precise than we would like it to be. So we worked with our principals and our team to really develop a progress monitoring process and an early identification process. We wanted to make sure that students coming into this school year, that our school teams know who's way out here on the right-hand side and what are we going to do for them from the get-go, and who might be way out here on the left-hand side, and let's get started and supporting and intervening there. So we've been working on that, all sorts of data involved, and each of our school principals has a little, what we call a data concierge out of the CNI office. So they have a person with them. The next one really talks about system-wide interventions. Jeff said this really well, I think maybe at our closing at the end of last year, that we have done so much great work in intervening for students in little pockets, but we still continue to have that gap of students, 12%, 10%, 15%, where we're not moving the needle as a whole. Individual kids were moving the needle. So what we hadn't really tried is a much more consistent system-wide approach. So we have this summer purchased with a lot of our ELO grant money around learning loss funds, school-wide interventions across in reading, in mathematics, and phonics. So all of our schools will have access to the same intervention, research-based, evidence-based intervention materials. We're systematically training folks centrally for that. So we have a little more control over who's doing the intervention, who's being intervened on, and all of those pieces. So we're really excited about that. And I know our schools are really eager to get started in those different pieces. And then I have 2 more slides, but professional learning communities, we know plays a big role in this, as do things called the care teams, which I'll talk about. But we'll start with professional learning communities. Last year was a year where many of us were just trying to stay afloat and make sure that kids got what they needed in the moment. And I would say one of our practices that we let slide because we were in the midst of a pandemic and being more responsive and proactive is really our professional learning communities. So we've dedicated this year to make sure that we get back to this concept of really looking at using this time to go through a cycle of inquiry, and that we're looking at student data as school teams, grade levels, departments, that we're really looking closely at our instructional practices and what's making an impact, and then how can we spread what we know is working. So we're really excited about that getting back to that good work on our Thursday afternoons when students leave early and our teams have 75 minutes to work together. And then the last piece of our multi-tiered system of support really is focused at the school site around the care team. And the care team is a group of teachers and principal and maybe some specialists at the site that really are the ones looking closely at the data. So they might be looking closely right now. We're just in the process of doing our K3 universal screener, our DIBELS, you might remember, our reading screener. So that team will look closely at the data and really determine who needs what. And in the past, with a less systematic approach, teachers would go to the care team and say, you know what, my toolbox is empty when it comes to Randy and I need some help. And sorry, Randy, I'm picking on you. But teachers, which is fantastic, right? They work with their colleagues, they use every trick they know, but sometimes they need more. So they would go to the care team and present a student, and the care team would go through a process of trying to find that support. Well, with our early identification and using our universal screeners, we really have care teams now managing that data and saying, hey, Vladimir, you have 3 students in your class. We think they need XYZ. You've been to Greg's training. We want you to start this. And really more systematically push out. But of course, teachers can always come to the care team as well with concerns that they're seeing in the classroom. But it's a nice partnership to see how we're doing. And we're really hoping to make a big difference for students this year. What is next? We just launched last Friday, which is so exciting. Karen, the great Karen Wilson, who walked by not too long ago, is leading what we're calling a Train the Trainers cohort. She has seven or 8 junior high school teachers. We've done so much work with our K5 and K6 group around training, and this came from the brilliant Keith Rocha, who really said, instead of the district just training us because we're all specialized, let's really bring together a group of teachers. Let's look at what are some impactful strategies that we want to see happening in every single junior high school classroom across both campuses. So this group just came on Friday, solidified their first 2 practices on our September PD day on the 24th, I want to say, 27th, 24th. All of our junior high teachers will be trained in those 2 practices. Those train the trainers will then be going out and collecting some data as to what they're seeing and how it's working, and we'll collect feedback from the rest of the junior high teachers, and we're just really excited about this. And on that September PD day, all of our teachers will come together, preschool through 8th grade, and really focus on extending their learning in all areas. I think that might be my last slide. So happy to answer any questions. Very exciting work in the CNI office.
It
It's
is.
been fun to be back.
It is. Board members, do you have any clarifying questions for Sandra? Okay, let's see, do we have any takers for public comment? Melissa Sobel's hand has been up for quite a while. I don't know if she actually wants to make a comment or not.
Oh.
Nope.
Go
Okay.
away.
All right, I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I am going to close public comment on this agenda item. Board members, would you like to provide comment? Vladimir?
Great stuff. I don't, I don't have any questions. It sounds like it's really coming together. I think you're doing a lot of good things, which is really great. The only thing is, my daughter just left junior high school. And so we'll have all this benefit here. So I'm disappointed there, but that was okay. So congratulations. I think you're on a good track. You're doing good stuff.
more along the lines of reiterating what Vladimir had to say. I'm glad to see, like, everything seems to be, not only for our students, things are going back to normal, it's going back to normal for our teachers. And we are doing what we used to do. We had to really build a plane while flying it last year. This year, it's like, okay, we knew that these practices worked, but we couldn't do all that because it was just too much. But to be able to do this again and to really focus on the data and really move forward like this is amazing. I did have some families, a family come up to me during the farmer's market this summer and asking what's going to happen. They were worried about learning loss. I said, well, my understanding, and it was like, we're going to be back to normal. And so I basically said what you said. I figured that's what you were doing. I thought I was right. I wasn't just making it up. My intuition was correct, but it's exciting for everybody involved, for the kids to get the resultant teaching from this, and for the teachers to learn about different ways to improve everything in their teaching. That's it.
Brian?
Yeah, so I echo what Vladimir and Jessica said. Like, so my question is, so the care teams, it sounds like we've got a great and continuously improving program around sort of tier 2 and tier 3, helping the kids who need extra help. And I'm wondering if we have something similar, if there's something similar we could do for the tier 2 and tier 3 kids who are, you know, a bit above and ahead of their peers. Just because I want to make sure that, you know, we are addressing both of those, both ends of the spectrum. Exactly.
I would say that the tier 3, we learn about pretty quickly of kids who are far out of the norm within their classroom. And we do all sorts of different things for that. I don't know that we hear about kind of the tier 2 kids who might need, but that's a great.
Well, but in the same way, I mean, the care team is sort of an extra layer on top of PLCs, right? And so we don't, I don't think, have anything structured, you know, sort of equivalent for the other end of the spectrum. So maybe just something to think about as an extra resource as we continue to improve the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Brian. Steve? Do you have anything?
Yeah, the only comment, I'm pleased to see that you're putting the systematic piece in place. We have had that 10% of children who the needle wasn't moving for the whole time I've been on the board. I'm glad to see we're trying to take a different approach to addressing those needs, and thank you for taking the time to make that happen, because I think that that's been the one stumbling block that we've not conquered. I'm glad to see we're trying to figure out a different way to make that work. So thanks.
I'm really excited about what you've presented. It's just, I think Steve just said it. It's a really lovely systematic way of looking at things. I'm really jazzed about the care teams, because I feel like what they're kind of doing is connecting the dots among all the different LASD resources, which is really fabulous. And I just had a quick question about the tier 3. Are we including like family support or involving the family in the intervention side of it?
Yeah, so part of the, I can't speak necessarily of what has happened in the past, but I will tell you this year, part of the requirements around using the ELO money for students who need a tier 3 intervention is parent notification, not consent, but notification that your child seems to be underperforming in a particular area. So we're working through those details around our DIBELS assessment that's coming up now. And we're really happy that we have the fabulous Lola, our family engagement person, to really, because we've also talked about parent education. And when we have a student who might be struggling in literacy, how can we do what we need to do at school, but also how can we help support families at home and some of those good at-home literacy practices as well. So yes, we want to absolutely include the family.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. That was wonderful.
And typically, to go back to your question, Brian, when we get a tier 3 on the other end, we always bring the family in and talk about the area of need, kind of the options for families and for students and what that looks like.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sandra? All right, thanks so much. I'm going to move on to our next agenda item. Board policy updates. CSBA periodically advises districts of recommended changes in board policies, administrative regulations, and board bylaws as a means to assist boards in keeping their policies current and reflecting all recent changes in laws and regulations. The Board of Trustees will review the updated wording for the following policies. Mr. Bear.
Yes, so as I reviewed with you last week, we do have some catch up to do in terms of policy updates. You'll see these each week through the fall. And this week we have 11 policies for updating. And they're heavier on Randy's department this week. But we are here to answer any questions you may have about any particular policies or any edits.
Well, since we have so many, I'm just gonna go through the list and see if anyone has comments on each one. So let's start with A, BP 3110, transfer of funds. Anybody have questions? Okay. B, federal grant funds. Anybody have questions or comments? C, sale, lease, rental of district-owned property. I actually have some questions on that one. So, well, two things. First of all, on page 4, the first paragraph, and this is just to clarify something for me, so maybe I didn't read it correctly. The first paragraph, there's a sentence that says, the resolution shall fix a time, blah, 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 not less than 3 weeks thereafter for a public meeting. And then later on, in red, it says, at least 60 days prior to the public meeting. Should those two, the 3 weeks and the 60 days, should they match up, or am I reading it wrong?
Where are you?
Page 4, first paragraph. I don't know if it's page 4 of the policy or page 4 of the packet. On the other ones.
It's policy.
Okay.
So the second paragraph where it says held within 10 days.
The first paragraph. The resolution shall fix a time, blah, 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 not less than 3 weeks thereafter for a public meeting. So it's a minimum of 3 weeks. So you could do it in 4 weeks, but, or I don't know. So then it says at least 60 days prior to the public meeting. So should it say not less than 60 days? Like, what if the public meeting is scheduled 4 weeks away, which is 30 days?
So which
So,
section?
Jeff,
are you in?
What's the header section?
Let me,
this language is all basically prescribed by statute, I'm
Yes.
assuming. So,
it is,
yeah,
it's not our language.
it's not our
It's
language.
not our language, right?
All right,
This is what the law requires.
well, as long as it
And
makes.
it's hard to decipher.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess as long as it makes sense to the. We're gonna, okay,
Not to discount your concern, Charlotte, but I don't know that this is up to us to wordsmith.
yeah, I just felt like my eyes were going cross-eyed. Trying to figure out what I was trying to say. And just to double check, the policy does not dictate when we need to sell property, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's up to us.
That's
Okay.
within the board's purview.
Okay, then that's it for me. D, leaseback contracts. Any comments? E, design build contracts. F, student activity funds. Okay, I kind of had a comment on this one. I was wondering, in the first paragraph, see, I don't have it in front of me, I'll have to pull it up. I was just wondering if we should include some language that says blah, 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 in keeping with or in accordance with the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. Since we did update that. I should go pull this up.
Where are you looking at inserting that?
The first, very first paragraph. Well, she's not looking.
Yeah, let me look up here.
not sure.
The
yet
first
what
paragraph
the
is the
word
Board of
is,
Trustees
Shelley.
recognizes that student organizations can provide students with an opportunity to conduct worthwhile co-curricular
Yep.
activities.
I just love it. I mean, do you think that it's? I was just wondering if we should read that through our policy. Is this also standard language and we can't add it?
But no, it doesn't mean you can't add it. So do you have a suggestion?
Well, my thing is I don't want there to be things that are funded that are exclusionary in nature,
Sure.
right? It's like everybody plays or nobody plays. That's what I was thinking of. So it says first, the numbered page 1 of the policy.
Right.
First paragraph. Can we include the words in accordance with the district's DEI policy? Maybe it's the last sentence.
After the word activities, probably in the second line.
Yeah,
And we should call it equity policy because that's what ours is called.
okay, well, let's do that. then.
DEI is what everybody else calls it. And corporate.
Okay. Okay,
We could even call it out, which is, it's like 4 something 1 5.
Sure, but it's not just only, I mean,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I just want to wordsmith it just to make it clear that this is not only about equity related activities.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
and then the other thing on page 3 of the numbered pages or page 4 of the packet, the last line of the second paragraph in red, equitable opportunities for males and females. Is there any way we can change males and females to something more inclusive?
Yeah, assuming that's not required into the boilerplate, which is like.
All gender expressions.
For all students.
All
Let's just say
students.
all students, and I think that'll just cover everything.
That might run by our friend, just to make sure. I don't know.
Athletic programs.
Oh, is it?
Runs, that's what that.
Yeah,
about
that's
athletic
Is it?
programs.
Well, this, I feel like, right, so presumably this comes from the Title IX world,
Right,
very much
exactly.
about equal opportunity for
Yeah.
female athletes, so. I don't disagree, Shelley, but we just have to make sure that.
Okay,
Perhaps it's a parenthetical about that gender expression, whatever they're so choosing or something. I'm not coming up with something on the fly, but
I just like the all students. I just thought I don't know,
yeah, but with the Title IX, it is
it is girls
girls
or
or boys, so but I think we can still meet somewhere on this. We just need a parenthetical to explain it.
I think generally the policies are updated to reflect whatever the current
They are.
climate requires in terms of things like this issue and equity and whatnot.
We'll look at it.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
it'll
certainly
get
agree with-
updated
I certainly agree with Shelley about changing that language.
Mm-hmm.
The board does.
I mean, if it's not
we can.
boilerplate and if we can't change it. Otherwise, tell me who wrote the boilerplate on the last time I changed it. There's more stuff in here. I've got like 2 pages worth of stuff. I'm like, this is regressive.
I think in this case, it's us actually just being better than the state
Yeah.
law. So we are not outside of our ability on this.
Yeah,
I don't
Okay.
believe.
Yeah, I will look at it and see where it's pulling that, because, I mean, Randy makes a legitimate point that these are all being scrubbed and put forward so that they align with current language, and we have had plenty of policies that we've seen and approved that have had broader language around gender expression.
Mhm.
This one doesn't, so it does make me wonder why. And
Yeah,
that there could very well be a reason for it, but I'll find out.
Could be that they had too many of these and I started toxic.
like mine. Look at that.
Shelley, if you have 2 pages of suggested edits, you want to send that to us?
Yeah, it's rather than taking up everybody's time. Okay.
Makes sense, Jeff?
Yeah.
But shouldn't we to hear about them as board members to see. if
Wait till
we
I get to
agree.
the one on pregnancy and morning sickness with quotes. That really bothered me. So,
I was thinking, Jessica, let's put the edits in there with noting that they're edits, right? So-
Yeah, I guess we would have the
Shall
discussion.
we
I don't know if
suggest-
we should have the discussion now, if we have, we're gonna have the discussion
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
possibly, right? That's why.
Okay.
okay, well, I'll skip a few of these so I can move us along. I will put them in an email. Well, yeah, like under, oh, we're not up to there yet.
Same policy? No.
Nope, sorry, we're not up to that one yet. G, personal leaves. Does anyone have comments? Oops, I lost my Zoom. I don't know if someone has comments. No. Okay, well, I can put this in an email. But there's a page 4 on the policy, or page 5 of the packet, the section in red that says blah, 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 that caused mental injury with a threat of physical injury. I was wondering if we can just take out the with a threat of physical injury, because we can't, this is boilerplate. Dang. And I need to talk to someone, because I feel like you can have mental injury, period. And that's valid, but okay.
Yeah, that's
Wait.
extracted from labor code.
And is page 8 the policy about religious leave? Is that also extracted from labor code?
It's citation.
Page 8.
Yeah, page 8 of the policy or page 9 of the
Well,
packet,
Yes.
religious leave.
That's the administrative right. Administrative regulations.
Oh, I might,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
She's in the AR now.
I'm in the AR, sorry.
Where, red?
Yeah, so yeah. Because the thing that I didn't understand is, why do we deduct the cost of hiring a substitute from the wages of the employee who's asking for a religious leave, when it didn't look like we did that for any other leave?
This is our current policy. Just
Right.
Okay.
so I'm not a lawyer and talking off the top of my head, but given that it's religion and we're a governmental body, I'm not sure that we can grant
Yeah.
religious leave out of our own pockets.
Oh, got it. That makes sense. Okay. Shoot, you guys, I have a whole bunch more. I don't want to take up everybody's time. Should we move on to letter H? Anybody on family care and medical leave? So family care and medical leave, is this like language we can't change like anywhere in it?
Well, I think that's too broad a assumption. I think it depends on what it is.
Well, on page 2 of the policy, bullet point 2, it refers to morning sickness in quotes.
It's probably a defined term.
Well, they didn't define it anywhere, because it says you have to get your healthcare provider to sign off on it. So medically, morning sickness is, and I looked this up, nausea and vomiting of pregnancy, nausea gravidarum, emesis gravidarum, severe morning sickness, hyperemesis gravidarum. Like, there's names for it. Instead of putting it in quotes, it just seemed a little, I don't know. She's got morning sickness, wink, wink. Like that, that's how I took it. Sorry.
The lawyer in me reads it as a defined term that they may have messed up and not.
Well, I just think it's, I think it's, to me, that
Yeah.
just reflects, I'm not saying you
Draft.
shouldn't advocate for taking the quotes off, but I mean, morning sickness, I think is a colloquial term. It's not a medical term.
All right, but it does have a medical term.
Well, it covers a
Okay,
lot
that's
of
fine.
precise medical things.
Like you said.
When they say preeclampsia, they don't say high blood pressure due to pregnancy. Yeah,
Would you like
okay.
the quotes removed?
What?
I'm for the quotes being removed.
I would, yeah. Let's just remove the quotes. We can do something as easy as that. Anything else on this one? Anything on letter I,
I
chronic
have-
absence and truancy? Okay, good.
Yeah,
Whew.
not just you, Shelley.
Thank you.
As I was reading this and started getting into the administrative regulations, it's page 8. And it's, top of the page says addressing truancy. And then you're going into one initial truancy. Anywhere where I start seeing, for example, B2, the parent guardian may be guilty of an infraction of the law and subject to prosecution. Anywhere where I see any sort of prosecution or criminal, I don't like that for our students. We should not be criminalizing them not going to school.
So I totally back you up on that.
Yeah.
And on that same page,
Yeah.
under addressing truancy, it's, why do we have the word arrest in there? Remove, I have arrest in line 2 of the first paragraph, and it's also in line 4. And then on page 9, bullet point 5, subject to arrest.
Yeah. No, like pretty much a lot of this.
It's
is
Probably criminalized.
I mean, this is
Is
ed
it?
code, right? Like, under the laws of the state of California,
That's what it says in ed code.
Yeah,
truancy
really?
does make you subject to arrest.
yeah.
And
Well-
I don't believe that we have ever asked the Los Altos Police Department to arrest any of our students or families, but, you know, like, this is a required policy. And I mean, if you read, it, as I read this policy closely, it's about protecting people by making them aware that they are at risk of this, right? So it says any person arresting, which we would never do, shall, do the following thing.
There's a
But-
lead up to it, right?
But if this is ed code, right, and it's education, it's not the penal code or whatever, then in the first 7 bullet points under initial truancy, it just looks at how we're gonna punish the truancy, but it doesn't look at what is the reason behind the truancy. Is it truly this kid doesn't want to come to school, or is it like school refusal? Like, we're not really looking at that.
So there's a lot that happens before we ever get to this level. Right? There's a great deal that occurs. I mean, this,
Have we ever gotten to this level?
Well, we've had students who have had
certainly not arrest.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Sure, a student who's truant has been, I mean, if you look on page 8, when a student has been identified as truant as defined above, the following steps shall be taken, right? The student shall be reported to superintendent, attendant supervisor, or designee. Sure, that's happened. Not frequent, but it has happened.
Mhm.
We notify the parent, absolutely. We notify them that they are obligated to have their child attend school.
Sure.
The whole number 4, that there's solutions, right? I mean, we have strongly encouraged some families to attend parenting
Yep.
classes that are run, used to be run by Katie Kraus, our old school
Yep.
resource officer. Because there is a dynamic that happens in some of our homes around attendance.
I just traumatizing to have a police officer show up at your house to arrest you.
Or
You're
even
like,
just
you
the,
know,
even
12
putting
years old.
this in an email and in the message can scare people
Yeah.
pretty heavily. And yeah, I just,
So we do let parents know it is their legal responsibility to
Yes,
have their
right.
child attend
no,
school.
I get it.
We
But that-
totally, we're not arguing with that.
Yeah,
We're not arguing with that at all. It really has to do with they're gonna be guilty of an infraction. This is
Yeah.
going to be criminal. What you're doing is criminal, and I worry in 2 ways about the parents and just like they're trying their hardest, or it's the parent may not be trying their hardest and somehow this comes out badly on the child.
I think
So
it-
and I guess it's more me and Shally having a problem with the law right now, and perhaps
that's what
that
it
Shally
sounds
and I
like,
have
yeah.
to do some
Advocacy,
advocating.
yep.
But I also just want to emphasize that a practice of telling them that they're doing criminal behavior is not a good practice for us.
And that's why we don't do it.
Good. And I just, but that's why, but
Very
we're
much so.
approving a document that says that
Yeah.
we could do. And that's what's troubling me.
Well, and I will point out that it has always said that,
Yeah, I know.
right?
But we have thousands of pages of these,
Yeah.
this stuff. And I did try to read these when I started as a board member, and I couldn't get them all.
And that is why
I did
under
actually.
1B on page 8, the
Yeah,
student's parent guardian shall be notified by the most cost-effective method possible, which may include email or phone call, that, and then there's this list, and it's not always everything on that list, right? We have some latitude here.
Well, I'm glad that we have staff in the district now who are compassionate and think about our kids. But I'm just thinking, if we're approving this, I don't know when we're gonna revisit this again. Criminalizing this kind of behavior could really set the child up negatively. I mean, for the rest of their lives. So I'd like to keep them out of the juvenile justice system as much as possible. I don't want them to touch that system if we can help it. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yep.
I think, Jessica, you and I have advocacy work we need to do.
I
We're
can
gonna-
give you Patrick McDonald's
I
email
just-
address.
I just
Really?
worry when you guys aren't here. And this is
Yeah,
a
exactly.
policy.
Well,
This
that's
is
what I
really,
mean.
like, I trust you guys completely.
Well, I think what's more important than
Yeah.
that, than us here,
Yeah.
is knowing who we hire
Yeah.
in this district.
Yes, that
Right.
too, for sure. For sure. Okay, so we do have the advocacy work. Thank you for coming along on this ride.
Does this mean I don't have to send an email with? I'm just kidding. But you know what? It does say something about having to change the language that is not progressive and in keeping with the times. Really. So, anywho. Oh, shoot. I think I was supposed to have asked for public comment before we had our discussion. Sorry. Sorry to
Never too
anyone.
late.
Sorry.
Well, we
Okay,
can-
this is-
you can still offer it. There's no requirement that it be offered at a particular time.
Okay, well. Anyone for public comment? Okay. Public comment. Oh, whoa, Lori. Lori is our one taker for public comment. Lori, you have 3 minutes. But it has to item.
Hi, I already sent an email to you guys asking for the bus transportation for students. My daughter goes to Almond School, so is there any way that we can facilitate or rent a bus? Since all the district, my
But your
this.
has to be on this agenda item. So I'm really sorry to cut you off, but it has to be on this agenda item only. But it sounds like you sent us an email, so we will definitely look at it. Thank you. Okay, board members, any other comments on this? Okay. Next, board policy deletions. CSBA deletes board policies, administrative regulations, and board bylaws when either the policy language is added to a different policy or when a policy becomes irrelevant due to changes in law. The Board of Trustees will review the recommended deletions. Approval of the deletions will take place at the next regular meeting. Jeff?
All right, as I mentioned last meeting, that there are periodically deletions, and these are the 3 deletions up in front of the board this round. Transfer of funds, deferred maintenance fund, and crime data reporting. And so I'll just give an example, the crime data reporting that the state's collection of this data has been suspended indefinitely. So therefore, the policy does not need to be there. If it gets reenacted, then we'll bring the policy in front of.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for Jeff? Any public comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing no public comment, no takers, public comment is now closed. Any board members, any of you, would you like to provide a comment on this agenda item?
No,
That was very definitive. Okay. All right, moving along then, board and administration comments. This time is for the board and administration to report on non-agenda items such as committee reports, school activities, legislation, and future agendas. Would you like to start us off?
Sure thing. Just too quick, I wanted to let you know that our specials classes at elementary are back in session, which is so exciting. So our PE, which we had started in the spring, that PE is back. Our music started on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, outdoors. Covington, the 5th and 6th graders were in the quad, learning how to play their instruments. It was really fun to listen to. And
That's
also,
awesome.
I know, it was great.
for some definition.
Yes,
fine.
exactly. And our computer science program started today across our elementary schools, which is great. And then both our special programs, our docents in living classroom are really looking for docent volunteers. They're holding their info sessions and training so we can get those great programs up and running as well. So all good news.
Wonderful.
I have nothing to add tonight.
I don't either.
All right, start with you, Vladimir. Steve, anything?
I will keep the trend going. Nothing to add.
Jessica?
I am, I have a couple things to add. I went to the Claudia Rossi event, which was great. She's running for supervisor. And so that was a wonderful event. So I went to Covington's first day back to school. It was great to see a full open campus. It was really emotional. I'm just glad to see some, all the normalcy is been great. So thank you. That's it.
Brian?
I was at Santa Rita's first day. It really was, even when we were back in the spring, it was only, a fraction of the kids. So it was really something to see everybody back. And I just wanted to clarify that our next scheduled meeting is September 20th, but I believe we're going to have a special meeting on the 13th.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. So just so everybody's aware, we'll be meeting on the 13th.
And I also went to the Claudia Rossi event. She's a wonderful person. I think she'll do well as a supervisor for the county. I went to Almond's first day of school and my heart was just bursting because, as you all know, that's the school my daughter went to. And so many parents that I talked to were so excited that we were back on campus. And everybody was masked and they knew the importance of staying masked so we can keep the campuses open. It was really great. I got very emotional. That's it for me. I'd like to adjourn this meeting tonight. Good night, everybody.